What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got another live fantasy football mock draft for you back on Yahoo with a 12-team half PPR mock. We have got the 5th pick overall. Should be pretty interesting. And while we wait to get to our selection, a quick reminder, if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, let us hear it in the comment section along with any questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you can want at a great value. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into it here. We are on the clock. The first 4 picks have been made. McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry. So recently, I've been getting the question, how high are you on Austin Eckler really? Well, we've got the 5th pick overall. It's half-point PPR. You're about to see how high we are in Austin Eckler, really. We take Austin Eckler this high. Look, if you guys don't agree with that, then I'll use this time to suggest some other players. I'd say every analyst, every single year, for one reason or another, which I've gone over mine, has a set group of players that they're very, very high on, higher than consensus. Austin Eckler is one of those guys for me, but if you don't agree, no problem. A couple guys that I'd recommend in this spot, if it's not somebody like Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, a great selection. You saw he would have been the suggested pick. If, again, you're looking at running back, other players, since it's half PPR, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, a little bit too risky for my liking. I would definitely also consider Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor, but again, those will be my top choices at running back. As far as wide receiver, let's pull up the draft board as well to, kind of give you an idea how this is occurring. We have Devontae Adams. He'd be, up for consideration along with Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley. I'd probably put him in that tier 1 category. But again, 5th overall, to me, that's way, way too early for a wide receiver when so many great running backs are still on the board. But just kind of going over these top running backs, these top players, I say running backs because 11 out of, potentially 12 of these picks will be running back. That's exactly how it is, in fact. So the first round, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, who was our selection. Then Ezekiel Elliott, good value for him there. I think afterwards is where you see that kind of break in tiers then with Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, more so one-dimensional guys. And then we have our first wide receiver, Devontae Adams, Najee Harris, then Aaron Jones, and Antonio Gibson. I know a lot of people really like Najee Harris, but I really would not be selecting him before Aaron Jones, before Antonio Gibson. You can make the case about Saquon Barkley, but that's a different conversation because of the injury with Barkley, who, speaking of him, he goes with the first pick in the 2nd round. And this is what I've said before. If you take Saquon and Barkley, just pair him up with a nice, safer running back. Antonio Gibson definitely gets the job done. Travis Kelce is the 2nd pass catcher selected. So, look, something I want to point out, this would be the worst case scenario. If you were someone that potentially selected a wide receiver with that 5th pick overall, this is why I say it's too early and you have to prioritize running backs in the first 2 rounds usually, because naturally, if you're drafting with people that kind of understand the positional hierarchy and know which position is the most important, it's running back. And you very well could see a run like this in your leagues where literally 11 of the first 12 picks are all running backs. And then you look at the board, you look at who's still available, and, there's all of a sudden not a lot of options at the running back position. Now, on the flip side, there's some really, really great values at wide receiver that are now available, which we can take advantage of. But running back, it's a steep drop-off, so makes you very happy to have gotten, that running back in the 1st round. And again, why it's so important. Now, let's look at these wide receivers. Let's look at these players, some of these draft results. There was a run on pass catchers, like I said, Hill, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf. I would like A.J. Brown here. I think he's a fine player. But again, with these running backs shaping up the way they are, I'm just going to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, and then in the 3rd round, select a wide receiver that I like out of the bunch, because, again, to me, if we wait on running back, then we're going to be left with guys like, I'll just highlight them here, James Robinson, Darrell Henderson, Chris Carson. And I would say Chris Carson, if we're lucky. James Robinson obviously has skyrocketed because of the ETN injury. Darrell Henderson now, before I'd been more likely to select him in the 3rd round, definitely. But with the trade of Sony Michel, it's a little bit tougher to buy into that. I'm not all of a sudden just not drafting him, but I am going to drop him down a couple of spots. DeAndre Swift is somebody that's kind of undervalued. He's somebody that I really can't get a read on with the Detroit Lions. I know how the Chiefs are going to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so that's why I'm a lot more confident drafting him. But again, taking a look at what's taken place afterwards, another run on wide receivers. And I mentioned it before, the second round is the sweet spot for these values as far as wide receivers concerned. Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Hopkins, A.J. Brown, tremendous value on A.J. Brown at the end of the second in a 12-team league. Kudos to that individual. Darren Waller, Allen Robinson, J.K. Dobbins, and Chris Carson, the next 4 picks in this third round. So we are on the clock here. And, running back, I'm not going to be selecting one of these guys. Chris Carson would have been my highest ranked remaining player. Here, I'm just going to go with Terry McLaurin. He's my next highest ranked wide receiver, and I'm going to scoop him up. I know some people are absolutely wild about CeeDee Lamb. That's fine. And what I'm going to do, instead of that is try and get a discount on Amari Cooper, who if I can get him around later, I think that's an absolute steal because I kind of view them as a 1A, 1B type of situation in that offense. But in the meantime, I'm all right with Terry McLaurin. I have him as a borderline top 10 wide receiver. So not too mad about this start. Eckler, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we got our starting running backs taking care of the most important positions. But let's take a look at the draft board again because I want to make sure we don't miss anything. After our Terry McLaurin selections, Patrick Mahomes and David Montgomery. So again, this is pretty typical. The first quarterback off the board in the middle of the third round, it's probably where it should happen. Again, if you're asking me, I would wait for a later point, but that's mostly because, I realize that quarterback is a position where there's tremendous value late on in the, in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, something like that. And if you're set on getting a tier 1 quarterback, well, you're probably not going to listen to me regardless and still going to pull the trigger on one at the end of the second, middle of the third, maybe even earlier. But again, I don't recommend doing that. You're better off waiting until the 5th round or, 4th round maybe, if you want to get a tier 1 quarterback. And, I then suggest going after someone like a Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, or a Josh Allen. Now, here, speaking of Lamar Jackson, you see him being drafted in the 3rd round. Again, I don't agree with that, but you're going to see it happen. The picks before that, Montgomery, CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods. So there goes CeeDee Lamb. I'm really curious to see where Amari Cooper will be drafted. Robert Woods was picked here. Cooper Kupp also falls in that conversation, by the way, in terms of tandem wide receivers that are very close to each other, 1A, 1B, that should be drafted pretty much one right after the other. And I do want to touch on this. James Robinson was just drafted towards the end of the 3rd round. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I think that is where you're going to see his ADP end up, end of the 3rd, if you're lucky, beginning of the 4th, because he really is somebody now that all of a sudden kind of returns his value that he had last season. And that was a very good fantasy option. He's, not going to be threatened by anyone on that offense as far as other running backs are concerned. And, technically this offense should be a little bit better than it was last season, so more scoring opportunities. Darrell Henderson at the end of the 3rd round. I'm not sure I'd be drafting Darrell Henderson this high. Again, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable taking him in the 4th round, middle of the 4th round, because you could argue there might be a running back by committee kind of trending that way. I'm not scared off by Sony Michel, but it's obviously not as great of a situation, as if they never traded for Sony Michel, because it tells you that there was a reason for doing so, whether it's because they just want depth and it's nothing more, or it's because they don't want Darrell Henderson having that full workload, or they're worried about the thumb injury. There's a lot of different possibilities here. Nobody really knows other than the Rams themselves, but we can speculate. And again, the signs, when you look at them, probably point towards, I'd say, Darrell Henderson not getting as much volume as he would have without Sony Michel, but that's pretty obvious. Now in this 4th round, we kind of got sniped a couple times. Cooper Kupp literally went right before us. I'm pretty bummed out about that. Notice DeAndre Swift is still on the board. I mentioned him before. I said in the third round, I don't want to take a chance on him, but I think here in the fourth round, this is pretty good value. So I'm going to scoop him up. And yes, all those concerns still remain about the groin injury, but getting a guy with, a high ceiling like this when we have two pretty safe running backs in Eckler and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm willing to take the chance on that. And this is right around the time where I start to take on more risks around the fourth, fifth round. So I'm okay with this selection. Now, wide receiver is going to be an area that we need to pay a lot of attention to because obviously we still haven't addressed the number 2 wide receiver on our team. I'm hoping for Deontay Johnson in the fifth round. We'll see if it breaks that our way, even though we've had some pretty savvy drafters in here. So I think there's a pretty good chance that, he might get sniped from us as well because here in the fourth round, I do want to say if Cooper Kupp was, available, he would have been the selection. And I think he was the safer choice. Don't have as many question marks. I would have passed up on DeAndre Swift, but it is what it is. George Kittle also, I do want to mention this, goes in the fourth round. That's really good value for George Kittle. All things considered, usually he goes at the beginning of the third round. So kudos to whoever got them there. There's a little bit of a run on tight ends now, Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts. So question here is, what do you want to do? Do you want to select somebody like a TJ Hawkinson? Do you want to go with the Deontay Johnson? Yes, there's more depth at the wide receiver position, but, I do think that we're at that point where there's a drop-off at that position as well. So I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson as my number 2 wide receiver, and then we're going to figure out the tight end position afterwards. This is probably that point in time during the draft where, you could start to question whether we made the right or wrong choice. I think up until now, we've done a pretty good job with these selections. Myles Gaskin just went off the board. I think he was a tremendous, tremendous pick here. In fact, I'd have him in the fourth round above a lot of these players, probably above a Mike Davis, Josh Jacobs, and Miles Sanders. I'm not sure about a DeAndre Swift just because I think the upside for DeAndre Swift is really tremendous. But other than that, I think we would get very, very lucky if TJ Hawkinson fell to us, in the sixth round of a 12-team league. I'd say that's almost just unheard of. Kyler Murray just goes here with the fifth round selection. And this is exactly what I meant. If you wanted to get a Patrick Mahomes in the third round, okay, that's great. Why not just wait really 2 rounds afterwards and get Kyler Murray, who is undoubtedly in the tier 1 conversation. I think he's got the potential to be the QB1 for the season if you look at the rushing ability and the offense he's in. So, again, I can't find an answer as to why you're taking Patrick Mahomes or really any quarterback that early in the third round. So, great pick for Kyler Murray in the fifth round is the takeaway there. Julio Jones is selected here after Kareem Hunt, who went after Kyler Murray. So, right now, I know that Team 11 won't be selecting a TJ Hawkinson, but again, there's just no way in hell that TJ Hawkinson makes it past, this team over here, basically past 1, 2, 3, 4 teams. And yeah, I just don't think that happens. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's our lucky day, even though, again, if there's a single auto pick, you would think that TJ Hawkinson would be the selection since he's the next best player available. So I'm not holding my breath. At tight end, other options, it's going to be guys like a Robert Tonyan, guys like a Logan Thomas, Dallas Goedert. So, again, not ideal. You could make the argument, I'll say it again, whether we should have gone Deontay Johnson or TJ Hawkinson. I think whoever we would have selected, the other one would not have been available. I think that's almost a given. And, again, you'll see it here. This team probably won't select TJ Hawkinson because they're really needy for a wide receiver. This team probably won't select TJ Hawkinson because they've already got Travis Kelce. But this team right here, I 1,000% expect TJ Hawkinson to be selected. They're on auto pick. They're going to go best player available. So TJ Hawkinson is the guy that I have lined up for them. And I'd almost bet everything I got that this is going to be TJ Hawkinson. If not, well, I owe you guys some money, but no, turns out that I was right. It is TJ Hawkinson, so we're going to have to kind of adjust. Looking at these other options that we have right now, the top quarterbacks are off the board. Dak Prescott, I don't have him in that tier 1 category, so I'm all right waiting. Running backs, let's see if there's anybody kind of left over that I really like. No, not really. And we've already got 3 starting running backs. Wide receiver here, this is where it gets interesting. Unfortunately, T. Higgins not available. I'm looking at some of these guys. Antonio Brown is also off the board. We've got some tough choices to make. Jerry Jeudy just got selected, so it's going to be a tough pick here. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, I don't love either one of them. Courtland Sutton, Deebo Samuel is probably the guy that I'm looking at. I think he's got decent upside. Brendan Cooks, bit of a gamble because you don't know whether Deshaun Watson is going to play or not. Thought we'd have more clarity on that by now. We don't, so I'm just going to take Deebo Samuel. I like the upside there, and then we'll figure it out afterwards. But let's see what we still need here as far as our roster is concerned. So we've got our flex, we've got some bench depth, and what we need to add is a quarterback and a tight end, obviously. But quarterback, I'm all right waiting on. I think we can get somebody, again, like a Matthew Stafford, like a Justin Herbert in the later rounds. So I'm not panicking about that at all. Yes, there's going to be a mini quarterback run here, but we've got a lot of options, folks. Quarterback is the deepest position by far. So again, look, Russell Wilson is still on the board. Aaron Rodgers is still on the board. Jalen Hurts, Stafford, Joe Burrow. There's a lot of options here. So no need to panic. Right now, looking at just best player available, tight end, probably Logan Thomas is the guy that I would go with. I don't love the fact that I'd have 2 pass catchers on Washington, but, I think Logan Thomas is the highest ranked tight end right now. And, well, we're not going to have to deal with that problem because he was just selected along with Dallas Goedert. So the tight end position got pretty barren pretty quickly. I don't know why the person that has Mark Andrews is selecting Dallas Goedert 2 rounds afterwards. That makes 0 sense to me. But it is what it is, so we're going to have our work cut out for us here a little bit. And again, looking at these quarterbacks, some have gone off the board. Aaron Rodgers is still there. Jalen Hurts is still there, so I'm not really worried about that. I'm looking at these other players right now that are still available. At this point, maybe I take a chance on Jamar Chase, but he hasn't exactly looked all that great. Courtland Sutton is somebody that's interesting. Teddy Bridgewater going to be the quarterback there, at least for now with the Denver Broncos. I kind of need some more wide receiver depth, so I'm going to go there. I'm going to go Courtland Sutton and, throw some caution into the wind. We're going Courtland Sutton, just loading up on more bench players. Then our last 2 picks will probably be tight end and quarterback because a lot of auto picks after this point in time, and it's going to get pretty crazy with some of these, what I imagine to be kicker and defense selections. So we won't, make you guys stay through that. But I think so far this has been a pretty realistic draft. I love the way we started out this mock with Eckler, CH, McLaurin, DeAndre Swift. Again, I wish it was Cooper Kupp here. Then we wouldn't have had to necessarily select Deontay Johnson here. It could have gone TJ Hawkinson. So I would have felt a lot better. Yes, our flex wouldn't have been as, big upside as with DeAndre Swift, but we would have been all right. So that's kind of my one, I guess, thing that I wish went the other way here. But all things considered, I'm happy with the way this team turned out. I think we've got exceptional running backs, a tremendous running back trio. Wide receivers, I think both these guys have top 12 wide receiver upside with Deontay and Terry McLaurin. So I'm happy there. And then, our depth, we've got some, again, potential high upside wide receivers with Deebo, with Courtland Sutton. So that's not too bad. And I'm going to probably here in the 8th round select my quarterback. Hopefully we can get an Aaron Rodgers or a Matthew Stafford. But other than that, tight end is going to be a tough spot, which is one of the reasons why I can't give this team that high of a grade, because tight end is going to be a little bit difficult. But other than that, we're looking good, and I got to give this a solid grade in terms of probably being a contender, probably a B type of grade. And there goes Aaron Rodgers, by the way, so we won't be selecting Aaron Rodgers here. And that's okay, though. Like I said, we've got a lot of other options. This thing will probably speed up here in a little bit because, again, a lot of auto picks. So it'll be our turn to make a selection pretty much in no time here. The guys that I'm looking at, I mentioned it before at quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Aaron Rodgers is off the board, so Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts probably my top two choices. And let's see what happens here. Robert Tonyan is selected. So nothing too crazy there. Won't impact the way we make a selection. And other than that, again, quarterback will be fine. I just want to show you how deep this position is. You know, we've waited until the 8th round, and well, basically everybody has almost gotten their quarterback, and we're still in a good spot. So I'm not worried about quarterback at all. You shouldn't be either if you've waited this long. There goes the Rams defense. That's an auto pick, so don't really pay any attention to that. We'll, again, probably just queue up our final pick because, as you can see, it's going to be a lot of defenses, probably some kickers mixed in. There goes Jalen Hurts. So unless this team here a little bit before us takes Matthew Stafford, then we'll be able to get Stafford in the 8th round, and I'll be pretty happy with that. If it's not Stafford, then other options, Ryan Tannehill. I'd be very happy with Ryan Tannehill too. I think he's a very serviceable quarterback. No, Zach Moss is selected, so there. Let's go Matthew Stafford. That is a no-brainer of a pick. And then tight end, I will just queue up somebody. But again, the options aren't all that great, honestly. So in this situation, if I completely punt on tight end, I'd probably select somebody like a Jared Cook. And here, I'll just queue up a Jamar Chase. I think at this point, it just becomes too great of a value to pass up. But at the end of the day, let me know what you guys thought about this draft. Did you like it? Did you have some other remarks about it? But more importantly, let us hear your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.